And there's a level of embarrassment, meaning you're exposed. The part of my job is actually that it's me. On February 1st, 2014, Philip Seymour Hoffman visited 6 different ATMs. He withdrew exactly $1,200 in cash. Security cameras caught every transaction. The next morning, he was found dead with a needle in his arm. But the police discovered something else in his apartment that changed everything. 65 bags of heroin with mysterious stamps. The real story isn't about his addiction. It's about who wanted him dead and why those final phone calls were never investigated. Philip Seymour Hoffman was born on July 23, 1967 in Fairport, a quiet suburb near Rochester, New York. Tucked into the kind of middle-class routine where lawns were trimmed, neighbors waved, and life felt ordinary until it wasn't. He was the second of 4 kids raised by Marilyn Ockenor, a sharp and compassionate family court judge, and Gordon Stahl Hoffman, an executive at Xerox who spent most of his days in corporate suits and briefcase rhythm. But in 1976, when Philip was just 9, everything cracked. His parents divorced and suddenly the stable suburban rhythm twisted. Marilyn became the head of the household, raising all 4 kids on her own while balancing courtrooms and case files. Her resilience seeped into Philip's bones. It stayed there quietly, shaping how he'd later play wounded, stubborn characters with too much going on beneath the surface. Though baptized Catholic, religion faded after the divorce, and their home shifted into a space where beliefs weren't boxed in. It gave Philip a kind-of quiet freedom to explore what felt real to him. What stuck wasn't faith, but story. His mother often brought him to small-town theater productions. And one night when he was 12, he sat through Arthur Miller's All My Sons. The characters on stage didn't seem like actors. They felt like broken people trying to piece themselves together. And something in that clicked. From that night on, the stage wasn't just a Placido perform. It was a mirror. That emotional electricity never left him. He'd always been physical, known more in school for his wrestling and baseball than any flair for drama. But at 17, a fast ball shattered his arm. One pitch, one crack, and just like that, sports were done. He couldn't go back. And while others would have sulked or coasted, Philip picked up something new. He walked into the theater department. He signed up for a role and he transformed. In May 1983, he played Biff in Death of a Salesman in the school production. For 3 nights, he let every ounce of frustration and confusion pour out on stage. Teachers leaned in. Classmates stopped talking. That was the first time people saw what he could do with emotion. What they didn't know was how much of it was real. 2 years later in 1985, he graduated as Fairport High School's valedictorian. His speech wasn't what people expected. Instead of some squeaky clean tribute to ambition, he threw shade at suburban sameness. He cracked jokes about how people in Fairport moved in loops and lived like copies. Everyone laughed, but they also saw the sting in his words. That smart, biting humor stayed with him, too. He had this way of wrapping pain in laughter, keeping people close while pushing them just far enough to feel something uncomfortable. That same year, he left for Villanova University on a wrestling scholarship. He tried to hold on to that old version of himself, the athlete, the tough kid, but then came a class, one acting class, one monologue from our town, one silence from the room afterward. That was all it took. By the end of that semester, head dropped wrestling, dropped Villanova, and transferred to NYU's Tisch School of the Arts. It was 1986, he was 19. He moved to Manhattan and lived small. Some days delivering newspapers, some nights sleeping on couches. Rejection followed him through narrow hallways and freezing sidewalks. But he stayed in it. He didn't look back. Not everything about his past faded. That same year, at 17, before he left Fairport, he had a near-death night. Too much alcohol, too much marijuana, too much pain wrapped in a teenager's skin. He passed out in a park alone, cold, nearly gone. A stranger found him and called for help. That night stayed etched in him. It was his first real confrontation with addiction. It scared him, but it didn't leave him. That recklessness, that need to numb. It waited in the wings for years to come. But it also gave him something else. Understood brokenness, not in theory, in his bones. Back at NYU, he studied under George Lewis, a method acting coach who demanded emotional truth. Philip didn't fake it, he dropped into it. In 1988, he took on Constantine and the Seagull, a role soaked in longing and insecurity. He tore through it. People noticed. Off-Broadway directors came sniffing. By 1989, he graduated with a BFA in drama, already known as the Fearless One, the one who'd bleed on stage and mean it. Somewhere in those early years, he met John C. Reilly. They crossed paths at a Chicago workshop, both of them tired of being cast as the sod everyman. They bonded, then collaborated, then stuck. Boogie Nights in 1997, Magnolia in 1999. Two men playing characters with open wounds and quiet hunger. Theirs wasn't a polished friendship. It was built on shared grit and late-night doubts. In 1992, Hoffman helped co-found the Labyrinth Theater Company alongside Philip Carlson. It wasn't glamorous. It was raw, chaotic, messy, brilliant. They staged experimental plays that tore through urban sorrow, loss, addiction. In 1999, he directed In Arabia, We'd All Be Kings, a hard-edged story about broken lives scraping together dignity. It was loud and heavy and full of truth, critics took note. Theater insiders circled his name. He was no longer just the actor who disappeared into roles. He was a force. By 2000, he made his Broadway debut in True West with Reilly. They rotated roles every other night. One played Austin, the quiet one. The other played Lee, the violent one. Then they'd swap. It wasn't just acting. It was a war. In one rehearsal, Philip hit too hard. A real bruise formed on Reilly's body. Tempers flared, but they didn't fall apart. They leaned in. That bruise became part of the story. That energy never left the stage. The performance earned Philip a Tony nomination, and not long after he played a death row inmate in The Glory of Living, showing how easily he could make an audience hate a character while still seeing a sliver of humanity. It started with a single Law and Order episode in 1991. Philip Seymour Hoffman showed up on screen for just a few minutes playing Stephen Hanover, a young man accused of assault. He was paid around $300. The episode aired on February 5th and faded into the background for most viewers, but not for him. That brief moment forced him to navigate the speed and sharpness of television work. It was nothing like the theater where time moved slower and emotions were allowed to breathe. But it was a beginning. Sharing scenes with future stars like Samuel L. Jackson Hoffman brought an intensity that wouldn't go unnoticed for long. Then came 1992. He was working in a deli when someone called him in to audition for Scent of a Woman. He showed up uncertain and broke. After multiple rounds, he landed the part of George Willis Jr., the awkward but loyal roommate in a film led by Al Pacino. The movie made over $134 million globally. It was his first real taste of Hollywood. That one role became a pivot point. He later said he wouldn't have had a career without it. Around this time, he added Seymour to his name to stand out and casting rooms flooded. Hoffman's character held the comm center. His stillness became one of the film's most emotional anchors. Later that year, he stepped into the talented Mr. Ripley. He played Freddie Miles. Smug, wealthy, sharp-tongued. He only had a few scenes, but his presence shook the film's entire tone. When his character was murdered, the audience flinched. He won Best Supporting Actor from the National Board of Review. To prepare, he lost 40 pounds, a dangerous shift that added fuel to the substance struggles he was already facing. But the performance left a scar. Even people who hated Freddie remembered him. In 2003, he walked onto a Broadway stage as James Tyrone Jr. in Long Day's Journey into Night. It was a role that demanded more than emotion. It needed torment. He vomited on stage. Not pretend, not faked, real. The pain came from deep inside. The cast said he brought the darkness home with him every night. It earned him a Tony nomination. The play ran 117 performances and pulled in over 130,000 people. Some said watching him was like watching someone tear their soul in half. That same year, he took on Owning Mahoney. The film was based on Brian Maloney, a Canadian bank manager who stole over £10 million just to gamble. Hoffman dropped 40 pounds again. He researched compulsive addiction. Isolated himself for weeks. The movie showed a man spiraling into his own quiet ruin. A single night in the film ends with a $1 million loss at a casino. Critics said it was so real it felt like watching a documentary. He didn't act addiction. He wore it. Then came Capote in 2005. This was the one. Hoffman trained for 4 months. Voice, posture, accent. Hugh watched hours of interviews, worked with dialect coaches, stayed in character the whole shoot, gained weight, changed his body, changed his rhythm. He was playing Truman Capote. He became him. The result was haunting. The film showed Capote's obsession with the murderers in cold blood, and Hoffman captured both the charm and manipulation. He won the Oscar for Best Actor. Some critics said it was the most accurate performance they'd ever seen. He didn't just win awards, he stopped time. In 2007, he flipped the page again. He played Gustavo Cotos in Charlie Wilson's War, the CIA man behind America's covert war in Afghanistan. The role was loud, profane, unpredictable. He sparred with Tom Hanks in every scene. To prepare, he dug through classified documents and studied CIA behavior. The character was real, and Hoffman made sure you felt every flaw. It earned him another Oscar nomination. Then came Doubt in 2008. He played Father Flynn, a priest accused of abuse. Miles Strayer was his on-screen adversary, and they pushed each other to emotional collapse. Many scenes weren't fully scripted, just raw improvisation. Hoffman stayed in character even when the camera stopped, keeping the tension alive. The result was chilling. Audiences couldn't tell if he was innocent or guilty. That was the point, and it earned him yet another Academy Award nomination. In the same breath, he directed The Little Flower of East Orange in 2007, casting his real-life partner, Mimi O'Donnell. It was a risk. The play was about addiction, broken families, buried shame. It was personal. Some said too personal. But he didn't hold back. He brought his own pain to the stage. The story wasn't just acted. It was lived. In 2010, Philip Seymour Hoffman stepped behind the camera for the first and only time, adapting a play he had been performing since 2007. Jack Goes Boating premiered at Sundance on January 23, 2010, and hit theaters that September. He directed and played the lead, Jack, a painfully shy limo driver who learns to swim and cook just to impress a woman. Amy Ryan played Connie, his equally awkward love interest. The story followed two working-class couples in New York, fumbling their way through love and betrayal. Hoffman rehearsed obsessively before filming even began, making sure every actor felt fully anchored in the world. The movie, filmed in New York, finished post-production in March 2010 and made $637,479 worldwide. It wasn't a commercial hit, but critics praised Hoffman's gentle, ego-free directing style and his sensitive performance. The Guardian called it refreshing and said that while the transition from stage to screen wasn't perfect, it still captured something raw and honest. The film earned nominations at the Independent Spirit Awards and remains a quiet window into Hoffman's theater roots and devotion to authenticity. 2 years later, Hoffman delivered one of his most haunting performances in The Master, released September 14, 2012. He played Lancaster Dodd, a mesmerizing cult leader based loosely on L. Ron Hubbard. Paul Thomas Anderson directed it, and Hoffman dove head first into the role, gaining weight and studying the psychology of charismatic manipulators. Shot in ultra-rare 65mm film, the first fiction movie in 16 years to use the format. The project was expensive and risky. Studios turned it down. Anderson and producer Megan Ellison had to fund it themselves. The gamble worked. On its first day, the film broke records, earning $147,262 per screen. It ended up with 3 Oscar nominations, including Best Supporting Actor for Hoffman. He shared the Volpe Cup for Best Actor with Joaquin Phoenix at Venice.